This is episode 38 of the Shame Proof Your Life podcast, the one where I talk about my board of directors, so to speak. I'm your host and life coach, Danita Bremer. Have you ever received a prompting that you ignored for a long time, like 17 years? This podcast is that for me. I'm telling my stories, I'm learning from my past, and I'm inviting you along for the ride. My intention is that you will find hope, relief, and understanding by listening to my stories. Okay, last week we talked about Mr. Thornton, and I loved that episode so much. I don't know how it was received by all of you out there in podcast land, but it really got me thinking about the important people in my life and why they're important, what kind of impression they made on me. So today I want to talk about a few others who also made an impression that has stuck with me for years and years and years. And I'm calling all of these people my board of directors. I went through an exercise recently with my coach, and it was almost like a meditation where she had us close our eyes and breathe and all of that. And she had us envision, people in different roles. And she really focused on, find somebody who's your cheerleader, who cheers you on no matter what. And that's where last week's episode with Mr. Thornton came in. And so as we were doing this kind of meditation, envisioning these people that are like protective around us, I had this light bulb moment about everyone who was coming to my mind. And I've done several times, like, imagine who you would want on your board of directors. And it always fell flat for me. Like, I don't know who I'd want. And this was just a little bit different of a way of getting there. And she didn't call it a board of directors. And I think that's probably what allowed me to get here. But this is basically what I have stumbled upon is my personal board of directors, not just in my business, but in my life, really. And I'm going to get to a little bit more of why that is, but I just wanted to kind of preface it with this is how this came to be. And it has been really powerful for me. So if you want to hop on a free call, I can walk you through that visualization, and maybe you can find something for yourself. Who in your life would act as this board of directors? What do they symbolize? That's what we're going to talk about today. So the first person I want to talk about is another one of my teachers. Actually, the next two people are also teachers. And he was my band instructor. I started band in fourth grade, and I played through, I can't remember now whether it was 10th or 11th grade. I think it was 11th grade. So several years playing clarinet and band, from a 10-year-old girl to a teenager that's almost an adult. So this man, Mr. Sandberg, really saw me through a lot of transitions and probably some of the worst times in my life and some of the best times in my life. He was such a dedicated, passionate teacher. So if you grow up, go to college, and then you choose to be a band teacher, the reason is because you love music and you want everybody else to love music. This was Mr. Sandberg. He loved music, all different varieties, and loved sharing his love of music. I actually see this now with my kids' band instructor. He reminds me so much of Mr. Sandberg, way younger version. And it reminds me of these times in band that, oh my gosh, so much fun, so much camaraderie. Like, this was my tribe of people. This was a place, the band room with my clarinet in my hands, was a place where I felt like I could be me and I could shine. I could do really well. It was like not just expected, but encouraged, right? So there's sort of that bigger context, but really, Mr. Sandberg, he just highlights to me such a passion for your work. He would do anything it took to help his students. And remember, this was a very small town. Most people didn't have a lot of money. So, for example, when I told my parents at the end of third grade that I wanted to be in band the following school year, starting in fourth grade, they kind of gave me that look like, okay, well, what instrument do you want to play? And, being the conscientious, responsible, oldest daughter, I said, I don't know, whatever instrument, is fine. I was thinking flute or clarinet. And then I just turned it over to them. And they, at some point during the summer, they found a clarinet at a yard sale. I wasn't there with them when they found the clarinet, but they bought it. I don't know how much they spent on it. It probably wasn't very much. And they said, here you go. You're playing clarinet next year. And the clarinet did not have a thumb rest, which, if you are a clarinet player or any kind of, vertical woodwind player, you're probably asking, how did you play it then? And my answer is, I have no idea. I don't know how I played without a thumb rest. I don't know how I held the instrument without a thumb rest, but I did for several years. And I think in seventh or eighth grade, Mr. Sandberg, I think we were doing some kind of solo performance that we were preparing for. And we would sign up for these like 15 or 20-minute slots for us to play in front of him. And then he would teach us and mentor us one-on-one. And he said, where's your thumb rest? And I said, oh, I don't have one. And he was like, how do you play? And I said, I don't know. I just play. I just figure it out. Right. And he was like, oh, I need to fix that. So he took my clarinet over a weekend, and he put a thumb rest on it for me. Like, that's the kind of man he was. He wasn't like, oh, you should go to the store and get a thumb rest. It'll only cost a couple dollars. He was like, let me fix that for you. And the other thing too, if you listen to the episode about dental shame, I had terrible teeth, very buck teeth. And I somehow learned to play clarinet with the wrong, like, embouchure. If you're a band person, I was supposed to have my teeth on the mouthpiece, but I somehow at some point heard that I was supposed to have my lip wrapped around my teeth. And so I played like that. It was very uncomfortable. And he was like, no, don't play like that. This is how you're supposed to play. It made playing so much easier. So he was like a personal mentor. And I just, again, kind of similar to Mr. Thornton from last week's episode, I could just really tell that he cared. He cared about, first of all, he cared about music and sharing that love with people, but he also cared about his students. He wanted them to succeed, and he was willing to help them do that in whatever way. And the other thing he was so good at was creating a culture in band, I think. It wasn't like he was the teacher and we were all the students and we had to do what he said. I mean, there was some of that, but he would invite us. Hey, would you like to join jazz band? Hey, would you like to be in choir this year? Like, he would make these personal invitations and group invitations, but I did choir one semester and it was so fun. And I did jazz band one semester, and he actually asked me, would you play alto sax instead of clarinet? It's very similar. And I felt very intimidated by that, but I was like, well, I can try. And I did. And it was so much fun. And yeah, he really believed in each of the students, especially at a time when I was not believing in myself. That's for sure. Like, I never felt like I couldn't play a song or couldn't perform. He was just like, of course you can. You just keep practicing and I'll give you tips and feedback. Like, he had such firm belief in us as his students. So that's Mr. Sandberg. And really what I learned from him is passion. Then I want to talk about Mrs. Gadberry, who was my sixth grade classroom teacher. And what I learned from her was fun and acceptance. She made school really fun. Now, fun is not something that comes easily or naturally to me. I'm very serious and responsible and, just do your work. And that's just kind of how my nature is. And one thing about Mrs. Gadberry was that she came into my life at a time when fifth grade had been the worst year of my elementary education ever. And so I was kind of feeling, I don't know, like hesitant and avoidant of everything. And I was assigned to Mrs. Gadberry's class, and she just had this lightness about her. Like learning was really fun. And she also had this belief in all the students. And but she really she demanded respect. We didn't mess around in her class. We totally had fun, but we also did our work. And she kind of opened me up to realizing that like learning could also be fun. I had always done it in a way that learning was like serious business. Mrs. Gadberry is an example of how they say your kids, or however the saying goes, they don't remember what you do, but they remember how you made them feel. That saying, which I totally butchered. I can't quite put my finger on specific experiences about how she showed up in the world that really impressed me. I mean, the biggest memory I have from sixth grade is when Robbie Firpo took my trapper keeper out and stomped on it and ruined it. That's like what comes up into my mind, other than Mrs. Gadberry, Robbie Firpo. Um, that was also the year that my little sister was born. But it was just that she, again, created this culture in the classroom where we were like all on the same team. And I guess I would say I really felt like I belonged in that classroom. Whereas I had moments of belonging in other classrooms, but it wasn't like I owned it. Like this was part of my experience. And I felt like Mrs. Gadberry really did a great job at that, at like giving us ownership over our own experiences and, you know, making us be responsible for that, but also like we can do this in a fun way. She did this thing that year where at the top of all of our papers on our headings, where we'd have to write our name and English or math or whatever, we all had assigned a number. So we had to put the number. And then when we passed the papers in, someone would always be responsible to putting the numbers in the right order. It was the order of her grade book, and it was our names alphabetically. So growing up, my last name was Castillo, and I happened to be the second person by last name alphabetical order in her grade book. So I was number 2. And for many, many years, number 2 was my favorite number because I just thought that was so smart of her and so efficient. And anyway, so Mrs. Gadberry really made me feel accepted. She also, I don't know, I think she saw me for who I was. She didn't like pity or cater, but she inspired at the point where we each were individually. So that was a really fun year. It was fond memories. It was also the year before middle school, before junior high started. So all the awkwardness there. So she was kind of sandwiched in between 5th grade. That was a terrible teacher, a terrible year, and junior high. That was just an awkward phase for me. She was this year of brightness and love and fun and all of that. The final person I want to talk to you about in this episode is my husband's Aunt Kathy. So I firmly believe that God put me and my husband together. Like if you were to hear us talk about, maybe I will do an episode on this, how like all the moving pieces that had to happen in order for us to meet each other, it seems very divine, very divinely inspired that we were put together in each other's lives at just the right time. And now that I've been married for 20 years and, together for 22 years and just have this long history with my husband and his family, which by the way, has a fabulous family. They're all amazing. I love them all. I kind of look back and I think one of the reasons that I was supposed to marry my husband is because he has Aunt Kathy. Aunt Kathy, totally going to cry here, you guys. Aunt Kathy is like the epitome of human unconditional love. She is also such an amazing, interesting person. She has this like natural curiosity about her. She's curious about everything, but it's not just curiosity. It's like genuine interest. She's genuinely interested in a lot of different things. And I love Aunt Kathy so much. She has taught me what it feels like to feel, I think, the most human version of unconditional love that we can feel. When I had little kids, so my oldest was born at the very end of 2003, and then a 3-year gap, and then my middle, and then about 21 and a half months, and my youngest. So from the time I had my second until about a year or so after having my third, it was a whirlwind. Like those 2 babies came very close together. And I think looking back, I probably had postpartum depression, but it was like basically having two babies at the same time, or a baby and a toddler, and then a preschooler as well. And so it was physically demanding, and I did not yet know about coaching. I hadn't done any therapy at that point. But when my youngest was 2, I told my husband, I said, I just need a break. I need to get away. And he was like, okay, well, where do you want to go? And I was like, I don't know. Where do I go? Like, Aunt Kathy. I want to go visit Aunt Kathy. So I had these little babies who I loved so much, but were like draining me. And probably I was dealing with some depression or whatever that I didn't know about at the time. And when I needed a break, I went to Aunt Kathy, and it was a long weekend, probably like 4 or 5 days, where I just got to like sleep in and be by myself in the quiet. And we went to a movie and we did little shopping, and she just showed me around, and she just was like with me with no expectation. That's what I love about her so much, is that she's just like with you, no expectation. She doesn't want you to be a certain way. She just loves you exactly how you are. And she's genuinely interested in what you're doing and why. When I started my business, she cheered me on. She still to this day continually like comments on my social media or sends me text messages saying like how impressed she is and how amazing she thinks I am. And um, again, she's one of those people that I can't put my finger on specific instances. I mean, we've spent many Christmases and holidays together. She has come out and watched our kids so my husband and I could go on a trip alone. She has loved my children as much as I have loved them when they don't have grandparents or aunts or cousins to love on them. She has handled all of that basically. And I am so grateful for her in my life. And from her, I have just learned unconditional love and what it feels like for someone to be genuinely interested in you exactly the way you are. So obviously, like as my board of directors, this is very like as I've looked at this, I've looked at, oh, these are the feelings that I want to feel and that I want other people to feel around me. These are the things that I want to develop in myself. Going back to last week's episode with Mr. Thornton, I want to be a person who just really genuinely cares and sees you for who you are and offers little bits of advice or help, without making you feel bad about needing it or wanting it. I want to have a passion for my work. I want to make things fun and make people feel like they belong and they're included. I want to develop an unconditional love and a genuine interest in everyone in my life. And when I look at my board of directors that way, it like lights me up. I'm like, oh, yes, I can have these people. Like, I don't have to ask Aunt Kathy because, she's a person that's still in my life. I don't have to ask her opinion about things. I can just channel how she makes me feel into the things that I do in my business. Right. So when I'm thinking about my business and thinking about how I can help people and thinking about my own journey and my own story and what have I learned, I can take those pieces and think, okay, I need to like passion. I want to channel Mr. Sandberg, acceptance and belonging. I want to channel Mrs. Gadberry, unconditional love and genuine interest. I want to channel Aunt Kathy. Right. So this is why it like clicked for me, this board of directors concept. And when I look at what have I really learned from these people in my life, what are the patterns that I notice? What I notice is the desire to be seen for who I really am. And I think that's a universal desire. I think everyone has that desire. And in addition to that desire, the need to be believed in, because Some of us are really good at believing in ourselves. My husband is a great example of this. He believes in himself. He does not second guess himself. He's very confident. And he's actually another one that's on my board of directors. But some of us are not so good at believing in ourselves. Probably, I would say, most likely because of trauma that has happened in our past. We have been given reasons to not believe in ourselves that felt protective at one point that we've grown out of, and then we just continue the pattern, right? And then the other thing that I've learned through this exercise has just been the feelings that I really want to feel and that I want others to feel when they are around me. It has been, I'm like, oh, I love that I can look back on my life and look at these people who have been really meaningful to me. I mean, there are others, and think about, how did they make me feel? Those are the feelings that I want to embody in my life and that I want to share with others. I just had a client wrap up a 6-month session, and I asked her to tell me some things that she learned and where she was now and what she was hoping for in the future. And she said the most beautiful thing to me, because I did also ask her about feedback for like how I coach her, the experience of coaching, and any constructive criticism. And she said, the thing I really love about you is that you're so gentle and loving, and I just can feel safe. I feel safe around you. I feel safe letting you hear my true real life stuff. Right. And I loved that. It made my heart sing so much, because that is what I hope. I hope that I help people feel safe. I think the first step in any healing or self-development journey we go on is feeling safe to be ourselves, feeling safe to be seen for who we really are, feeling safe to be believed in, feeling safe to feel the way we really feel. So that was a big episode. I hope you can feel my passion and gratitude for these people in my life. That's enough for now, and so are you. I am enrolling right now, as of this recording, for my new one-on-one program, School of Self. Everything I talked about in this episode, we touch on in School of Self. Check the show notes for a link to sign up for a free call if you're interested. 0 obligation, 0 commitment. Until next time, go be you and follow the spirit.